Hello and welcome to day 10. Let's get into this one. It's a big day, it's a big number, it's double figures, and we're going through more and more LJL games. And this is the last day for a little bit of time that you will get to watch some LJL. So make sure you tune in today. Call your friends, call your mum, tell them to get on the stream right now. You don't want to miss this action. But introducing who is with the action today, Infinite Dodge, RMC, the voice from America. How are you doing today?
Sleepy, but ready to be woken up by some high-quality games. What about you, RMC?
Likewise, I'm happy to be here. Excited to get into this, and excited that for a change here, Dodge and Jerry. We've got the NA takeover. Normally, it's you EU folk taking the early shifts, but it's NA on the early shift today.
Indeed.
NA on the early shift, indeed. But talking about shifts, let's see who's been put in a shift. Let's get the standings right now for how the league is shaping up, because no surprise to anyone that's been watching at all, Sengoku still popping off at the top. DFM, well, of course, they're near the top as well. But the Hawks overachieving this split so far. So we'll see if that does change. Bernie Cole Russell just is hitting up the fourth position. A little bit of a race there for fourth place. Crest Gaming Act there a little bit lower than some would have maybe expected. And AXZ V3 at the bottom, which is kind of where we put them before. But I'm going to ask you guys, is there any crazy standings that you guys feel from that? Or are you saying, you know what, that's pretty reflective of how you feel the teams have gone? RMC, I'll let you get your opinion first.
Well, no, I think it's pretty fair. They're kind of where we expected. The only big question marks right now just surrounding Burning Core versus Roscoe Jesters. And it's because, Roscoe Jesters, they have to start a little bit slower. They seem to have found their grounds. The question this round robin to me is, can they overtake Burning Core?
Yeah, an interesting one indeed. I feel like it does feel like we always talked about CGA being the coin flip, good day, bad day, but there's been a few teams this split that have kind of felt like that. Burning Core, Rascal Jesters, indeed, Infinite Dodge. Were there any surprises on that standings for you, or do you feel like that is very representative of how everyone's playing?
Yeah, I think it's fairly accurate. I think something that's very nice about the standings as they sit now, as opposed to closer to day 7, is there's less of a scrum in the middle. I think things are really starting to get demarcated, where we're seeing the separation of the teams based on their talent, and I think it's only going to get more and more precise where these teams wind up where they belong as the split goes on. I agree with RMC. RJ might have a chance to sort of move their way up, but I think this is honestly a lot more what we expected in spring, with Hawks being where they are. I think things look about exactly where you would pin them coming into the split.
Yeah, and I would maybe argue that I could potentially see V3 having picked up a couple of wins. Like, there were some close games. CGA maybe shouldn't have won that one, but that's all for debate. That is all for debate, and we will debate that a little bit later. But let's get into game number 1, CGA versus AXIZ. Now, these games are all a repeat of day 7's actions. So if you were there for that, you'll get to know what happened. But this is what happened on day 7 for CGA versus AXIZ. We saw the Belveth being locked in for AXIZ from Swamp, but this didn't feel the greatest. CGA built up quite a big goal lead, about 1,700 early on in 15 minutes. They also had all of the Drakes, so there were no Drakes gained by AXIZ. And RMC, obviously you're the AXIZ fan here. I want to pose this question to you. Do you feel like AXIZ's early game, the pre-15 minutes, is what's really holding back this team?
Kind of, not really. I feel like AXIZ as a whole is holding AXIZ back as a team. It's not to just say, oh, it's the first 15 minutes that's killing them. No, they're just dying everywhere. And, I'm just thinking back to this game as well. This is the bloodiest game of the LJL. This day 7 Crest Gaming versus AXIZ game, 38 kills. So it's not like AXIZ just folding over and dying. They are trying to fight back. It just feels like AXIZ, though, they're not able to execute their game plan, and they're just playing a little bit below everybody else's level.
Yeah, and then in that game as well, there was some drama. CGA living up to CGA standards, almost flipping at Elder Drake, which some people may want to forget. But obviously, it was a closed-out game. Infinite Dodge, from CGA's perspective, what are you kind of looking at here? Are you seeing this as a game where they need to come through and look dominant? Or are you saying, okay, actually, you know what? This could actually be a lot closer than they would like?
You know, I just think the matchup spread goes so well in CGA's favor here. A lot of the strengths of these two teams are in similar positions, or the assumed strengths of these teams coming into the split, especially Sangchu, was expected to be one of the big carries over on the side of AXIZ, but he's just sort of matched and counteracted in spades by the likes of Hybrid. It's just not even close, I feel like, the level of these players so far in this split. So unfortunately, it's a hard battle for AXIZ to make a case for themselves in, because I just feel like they're counteracted everywhere where they have strength.
Yeah, indeed. Now, let's talk about where we put the power in these teams. Sangju and Hybrid, I just hit my hand, are both really, really powerful ADCs, and I feel like they definitely have been the soul of a lot of their teams that plays, and we actually can have a little look at how they do against each other. Now, if we can have a look at this one, we have the CS per minute, which is pretty much even, but the damage per minute is quite a bit higher to Hybrid, and also the damage percentage of their team is a lot better too. But is that potentially swayed by the fact that Sangchu is never ahead in these situations? As we can see, minus 655 gold at 15. On the flip side, it's plus 650 for the side of Hybrid. So do you guys feel like maybe Sangchu could do more if his team put him in a better situation? Or is it just a factor that Hybrid is much bigger a carry in these teams?
Well, I think for Sangchu specifically, we think back to the spring split. He's not in that big a difference of where he was. He was also struggling a little bit in lane last split. AXIZ generally doesn't get that lead in that bot side. They don't give enough resources to Sangchu, and yet Sangchu was still pumping out really high damage. Was potentially in that top 3 in the AD carry role, often coming up in that discussion. But that's not happening this split here, J-Real. Yeah, sure, you're not getting the resources. You should be used to that. But he's also just not putting out the damage to split. And if anything, Megaman's been stepping up for AXIZ and carrying that weight. I think I said previously that, hey, we need Megaman to be the secondary carry. The narrative feels like it's shifted. And instead of Megaman being the secondary carry, it's Sangchu needs to step up and be that secondary carry.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that one. I mean, I think if you look at the wins that AXIZ did manage to pick up at the beginning of the split, they were basically on the back of Megaman popping off, which wasn't the formula last split. So it was a decent start. They haven't seemed to be able to build any momentum off that. They've really sort of gotten washed off since that 2-0 start to the split.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. It's almost like we are reading from the same book, because I was also going to bring up this statistic. Megaman is actually dealing 30% of the team's damage right now, whereas Sangchu is only doing 26. Now, I say only, obviously that's still quite a large amount, but I was a little bit surprised that Megaman is the one dishing out the most damage. And with that, I had a little thought that I want you guys to react to, not like on YouTube, but right now, right here. Do they switch up their style and play for Megaman? Play for that mid lane, really try and push that mid lane potential, and then kind of say, you know what, Sangchu, you can then play second fiddle here. You can play basically a little bit less with all of the gold access, but still put in the shift. And actually, let's just say Megaman can carry.
I'll pick that one up first, I guess, just because I have strong feelings on it. I think you have hit the nail on the head, J-Real. I think it's a good strategy, because Kaito, more of the role player, right, for CGA. You're more depending on Kashin and Hybrid to really be your pop-off players on CGA. I mean, if you can establish leads in lane, you're never going to beat CGA committing to the same style as them with Sangchu as your AD carry. You can funnel everything into Sangchu, but if they're funneling everything into Hybrid, I know which side of that matchup I want to be on. So I definitely like that idea. I think playing through Megaman definitely should be the wave from this point on for AXIZ.
Yeah, I agree with Infinite Dodge in that if you're trying to funnel Sangchu into Hybrid, that's probably not a winning matchup. Maybe in some other matchups that say, yeah, try and, or no, funnel Sangchu continuously here and hope that Megaman pops off. But in this particular matchup, yeah, I agree. I think you funnel Megaman, or if anything, maybe put Swamp on a carry. I like the Belveth idea. And the last time they played, Swamp's Belveth really wasn't the problem. It was actually probably one of the better performing parts. Maybe funnel Swamp. Go with that jungle mid synergy and try and pop off from that part of the map.
Yeah, indeed. There is always that potential. I think that the Belworth definitely gave them a different angle. Obviously, in that game, it's a little bit hard to judge because they didn't get a good early game. CGA really did build up quite a big goal lead. And then from that point on, it's so hard to play the game against him, especially when Belworth is someone that needs to snowball a little bit, But I do bring up this early game again. They're averaging down 2,100 gold at 15, which is quite a large margin. That's quite a lot of gold to be down at 15 minutes. Now, obviously not the craziest stats in terms of single game, but obviously overall, I do think they are on the lower end of basically who has the gold at 15, which is not too fun for them. So with that being said, do you find that that's potentially playstyle or comp that they've been picking? Do you feel like they maybe should pick some more early game stuff, or is it actually that they're not being proactive and other teams are just taking advantage of them? Dodge, I want to get your opinion first.
I think RMC and I are probably going to be aligned on this, which is you can target play style, you can target comp, but at the end of the day, it comes down a lot to execution. If you're executing on, or rather, if you're failing to execute on a certain play style, it doesn't matter what play style that is. And AXIZ just generally haven't been at the level of execution they were earlier in the split. They looked like they were really coming out of the gates strong, and they just haven't been able to match that same level of performance. But I do think the draft also plays a hand, right? You look at Sanctu, the kinds of carries he likes to play, the Ezreals, the Zeri, the Jinxes of the world, they take longer to get into a groove. They take a little bit longer to hit their power spike. So I do think you could probably move more to like a Kalista Renata type lane. I don't know. RMC, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't think composition's been the issue for AXIZ. It's all been about the execution. I think their compositions have been fine. They've been balanced. They have tried different things. I mean, Sancho has had 2 games of Kalista. Still didn't work well for him. So, I really think for AXIZ right now, the comp's fine. The coaching staff, they're doing a great job on that front of things. The players just need to be able to actually do what the comp wants them to do. If it needs to scale. If you need to play early, play early.
Yeah, and talking about the comps, I want to go back slightly to Mega Man. He's played a lot of different champs, He's played 6 different champions so far. Out of those, there's been a lot of differences. We've had Azir, we've had Lissandra, we've had Yone. Out of the champs that he's played so far, are there any particulars that you want him to go back to, or are there actually any that in the meta right now that he's not played that you kind of like, what, Mega Man? I really want to see you play this champion and be the carry for today, or potentially be the supportive champion for today. So RMC, I'll get your opinion first. What champions are you really wanting Mega Man to go back to?
I think for this particular game here, because we're looking at Mega Man to be a carry for the team, I think the Azir, the Corki, the Yone, those is what I'm looking at here, things that can pop off. Mega Man as a whole has a really wide champion pool, but he doesn't typically excel at any one portion of it here. So I think it's the flexibility we're leaning on. It's a skill I want to see. Preferably not blinding the Azir, or at least not B1ing the Azir here, or R1ing the Azir. But yeah, I think Azir, Yone, Corki, that's where I'm leaning towards.
Yeah, and then for you, Dodge, similar?
Yeah, for sure. I think the flexibility, definitely the biggest strength for Mega Man. So maybe you save counter for him more often. I mean, if you look at what he played last split, there was Lulu and Tryndamere and all sorts of random stuff that, isn't necessarily meta defining, but they saw a spot, they saw an angle, and they said, this looks good in this particular game. Can you play it? And he stepped up and said, I'll give it a shot. So I think just leveraging your capability to play a very diverse range of styles. I especially do like the Azir, in particular, the RMC points out, because it does have some lane presence, right? Into shorter range matchups, it can be a little bit of a bully. You go Q max, poke him out of lane, and then you still scale up into this team fight monster. So if it's a good spot for Azir, I do like the Azir pick. Otherwise, I think it's up to the big brain to sort of determine what's going to be the specific skeleton key to fit that match.
Yeah, and there is a lot of question marks. There's a lot of what do you pick, how do you play it. There is a lot of those coming through, but obviously this could be a closer game than maybe some people would have expected, especially from last split. But we also have to think about the top lane as well. CGA obviously do have Nap, who has been popping off and likes to play things like the Olaf, which mainly have been banned a lot, whereas Yoshi is a strong tank player. Do you feel like this is going to be a bit of a weak spot for AXIZ, RMC?
Yes, 100%. Unfortunately, yeah, because Yellow Yoshi has been kind of pigeonholed. That's it. I do want to give props to Yellow Yoshi for his Gnar play recently. He's been playing a lot of the Gnar, and the Gnar actually has looked decent. He's not been falling as far behind in terms of CS in lane, which he tends to do on the tank. So it is going to be a weak spot. Nap can punish. Nap has looked like a great split pusher this split, and that will work directly against Yellow Yoshi's pool.
Yeah, well, we will see if they do get those crit shots off of that weak spot. But let's get into game one. AXZ, CGA, Infinite Dodge, RMC, take us away.
Thank you very much, J Real. We are into action for game number 1 on the day here. And RMC, AXZ knows what point to attack with these bans here.
Yeah, a lot of focus into this bot lane right away, and a lot of early game focus. Both Kalista and Lucian taken off the board here. And you know what? We had already said that's the one lane, that AXZ normally wants to play through that we didn't think was going to be successful. So I guess we're on the same page as their coach as well.
Yeah, it seems like it. Meanwhile, AXZ going to default to what we've seen across so much of the world through the summer. It's going to be that Wukong first pick, but Zoe, Hover, I'm not sure if you want to be snapping up an early mid lane here, RMC. Would you rather save the counter for one of your solo lanes? Where would you aim it if you were on this red side of CGA?
I will say that, okay, I will say Kaito has not been counterpicking for the most part. He's been blinding Ari repeatedly. It's his most played champion. Second most played is Zoe with only 2 games. So CGA, they're going with that blind again. And it's very interesting that we see this happen, Dodge, because it's not common. A lot of times we do see instead jungle sort of picked up blind or as counter, especially when you see the Wukong. We see bot lane picked up early. But with all the AD carry bans, I think CGA are trying to actually hold their bot lane for a counter pick. They absolutely want to smash Sangchu and Ozuka here.
Yeah, and they might just get the chance because they are going for another one of these scaling hyper carries in the likes of Aphelios for Sangchu, going to be picked up. Now they are deciding between a couple of different enchanting type supports. I don't know how much I necessarily love the Yuumi Aphelios combination. I feel like you have a real lack of survivability early down there, which is the exact opposite of what Sangchu and Ozuka need. So I definitely like that Renata Glass pickup a lot more.
Tosh, I'm going to be honest. I'm just happy Ozuka's not picking an engage tank because the last couple of games have not gone well for Ozuka trying to engage here. So Renata, not with the Kalista means you're not going to get thrown in there. I already like the adaptation, and I want to see, what sort of positioning we get. CGA, on the other hand, interestingly, kind of just handshook it, right? Went with the Jinx to match the Aphelios, something we saw a lot of in spring, and they're holding their support pick instead. In fact, I would say in the bot lane, support matchups are actually more important for determining how the lane goes here. So there's a chance for AXZ to try and pinch that pool a little bit. Things that traditionally do well into Renata, hook champions, like the Nautilus, like the Blitzcrank Anchor, even the Pike, even though I don't think Nema is really much of a Pike player.
Yeah, no, it doesn't fit the MO that we've seen established so far, but a Yasuo ban in the second rotation here, is that just a Wombo respect ban there? Or you have the big AoE knockup on the Cyclone coming through from the Wukong? Can you walk me through the logic on that?
Yeah, I'm actually a little bit surprised by that because if we're thinking Mega Man, the Yone comes to mind, not so much the Yasuo. So I wonder if something came up in scrims or whether they're kind of just going, okay, you know what? We know you play Yone, and if you can play Yone, you can probably play Yasuo. We just want to play safe around the Wukong. I personally think the Yone is just more dangerous for Mega Man, but given that you already have so much physical damage here, and Yellow Yoshi is unlikely to play magic damage carries in the top side, I really don't think the Yasuo ban was necessary.
Yeah, definitely came a bit out of left field. I'm glad to see we're on the same page on being surprised on that one, but now the final ban will be, as you said, hitting that support pool, less the champions that you had targeted there, the hooking sort of hard engaged champs, more the vanguard of the Enchanter and the Tahm Kench there, but will be Nema feeling a bit of a pinch on the support pool. We'll see what CGA does pick up here on R4.
Yeah, and if Nema just wants to play defensively, you can always still pair it with the Braum. It's still very effective at peeling off the Wukong here. But yeah, no, that I expected more aggressive picks here because if you're going to pinch the AD carry pool that much, and we're saying right now that Hybrid is looking better than Sangchu, if you want to skill check them, you go for the lane, you go for aggression, you go for kill threat here, and that will give counter pick as well as CGA. They're going to hold that last pick for that top lane, and we already said Yellow Yoshi, not a massive champion pool. Nap has been going for those split push champions, things like Olaf, Gwen, Lilia even, Camille, all on the table right now to potentially punish.
Yeah, those blind tanks have gotten Yeliashi into trouble more often than not, unfortunately. And with the Poppy off the board, that's the one tank that he can pilot to an expert level removed. So we'll see. It's going to be that blind. The big punish counters come out. AXZ really thinking on what they want to pick up here.
Yeah, and for AXZ, I almost just assume the Gnar. Yeah, at
Yeah.
this point, because you've got a blind attack, and like we said, the Yellow Yoshi often has to blind his picks, but he's really struggled on the melee tanks. Even on his favorite Poppy, which did get banned here, he's been often going down, 40 CS in lane, which is not really acceptable. The Gnar, yeah, he's down CS, but it's not that terrible. So I think AXZ, really solid compositions as we expected, and it's given Nap kind of a free lane to answer here. I was wondering if we'd see the Olaf come through again. I did like that pick, but no, it's going to be the GP, and we've seen that a lot, the split in the LJL. Really, really strong skilling, and specifically in this game here, Dodge, I am worried that AXZ don't have a good way to deal with that gangplank later. He will be able to just sit there and siege along with that Zoe in this sort of face-off situation.
Yeah, lots and lots of effective range, lots of burst between those two solo laners. Definitely a scary proposition for AXZ to have to face down here in our first game of the day. And it feels like the GP is such a great pickup for CGA specifically because it really helps them to enable hybrid with that cannon barrage in the early game as well.
Yeah, for sure. And in fact, I was just actually thinking back to day 7 here in Infinite Dodge, and if I recall correctly, that is the exact same matchup we actually saw, was the GP into the Gnar, where Yellow Yoshi blinded the Gnar and just got punished by Nap there in that lane. And what's even scary was that Nap was massive that game, going 9-1-6 on the GP. Untouchable here. And so when I'm looking at this game here, I'm thinking Swamp had better be going to that top lane with this Trundle. Yellow Yoshi is unlikely to win it. So to me, eyes on the jungle here. What can this Wukong do?
Yeah, it will be up to Swamp to force those early plays, find the early aggression to get the team rolling. GP, a very, very scary counter pick into the best of Gnars. Yellow Yoshi not really proving himself to even be in that bracket yet, so definitely an uphill battle around the top side, but we get another look at the final team compositions as they shake out. Tell me about this mid lane matchup a little bit here. I'm not the biggest expert on mid lane. Who's thought to win the early game between Azir and Zoe?
So Zoe's actually one of the most, one of the strongest early game mid laners for the most part. Just landing a simple sleepy trouble bubble often just means you win out that trade, and especially once you start hitting that, lost chapter mark, you don't even need the full mythic. Just the lost chapter alone often means that you win out the lane because you just keep poking away. And for the Azir here, Azir's got good answering poke, which is why we're seeing it picked here, but it's a lot smaller chip damage, so you do have to build it up. And I don't think we're going to see the Azir win out early. In terms of shove, you also don't really have the priority over Zoe. They're picking it more for skill and up, and I hope that AXZ recognizes that, respects that. If you are going to play around that, it's going to be more on your jungler trying to get in there and actually getting the engage for you rather than looking at the Azir to set you up overly much.
Yeah, for sure. As you do mention about that Azir poke damage, we take a look at the runes. It will be that Summon Airy picked up for Mega Man. A lot of times the default poke rune, either that or Comet, but the Airy, of course, a little bit less damage, but it's guaranteed damage as compared to the Comet, which isn't always bound to hit. Anything else jump out to you with these setups here, RMC?
Fleet footwork for hybrid there in the bot side, and well, for Sanctuary here, both of them really going a little bit for that sustain. Usually, we've been seeing lethal tempo come through for a lot of these AD carries. Top side though, Nap is already starting to bully out Yellow Yoshi level 1 trading in on this.
Yeah, I mean, that's just the power of the Trial by Fire passive early on. Although Yellow Yoshi trying to respond here, does have the D-Shield, will be ticking up some regen, but people underestimate just how hard that GP hits with the melee auto attacks with that passive early. Definitely already off to a great start is Nap now. Going to have full priority in that lane. Hopefully get an early shove off, get a nice reset, and be ready to impact the map as things go on. But as we look at this jungle start, looks like it's going to be parallel here between these two, both working their way up towards top.
Yeah, and I do want to talk a little bit more about that top lane, because you mentioned the D-Shield for Yellow Yoshi here, which is a safer, more conservative start. But when you're going for those heavy trades here, Corrupting Pot really does win out early. So I think Nap recognized that, saw that, and was like, hey, if we're going to fight level 1, your D-Shield takes time to really take over. The big part about D-Shield is the sustain it gives you in lane, all the healing, the regeneration. I'll take my Corrupting Pod for my immediate regeneration here, as well as the further burn, and I'll win out this trade, take possession early, which isn't how this lane is supposed to go between Gnar and GP.
Yeah, definitely a bit of a bad omen to begin with, as AXZ is giving us more bad omens with a little bit of a pause here. Not how you want to start off the day, but we will just have to wait and see how that does get resolved. Any other points on this early game and what you expect to see to jump out while we're waiting a little bit just to see if this pause gets resolved quickly?
I mean, both junglers starting bot side, Infinite Dodge, like you're pointing out. So expect to see, top side attention. Interestingly, they're going to isolate the bot lanes a little bit, which actually should favor AXZ here. As much as Nautilus does kind of have some early threat onto the Renata, a lot of it is conditional on having the follow-up, and Jinx early on won't have the ability to pump out as much damage as Aphelios. So AXZ, there's a window of opportunity for them here for Sangshu to try and show that once again, he deserves to be in that conversation for top 3 AD carry spots.
Yeah, it's I think really interesting that both of these AD carries here opted for fleet footwork. We're right back in the game. Huzzah! No long pauses for us. Both of them really saying we just want to survive this lane and get to our late game, which is understandable. But as you point out, that might give the advantage to Aphelios. Is Nap probably fine here? Is forced to flash. The wave's not in the best spot either, but Shin is hovering. Gets a nice pillar.
Okay.
But nothing doing off that one.
Still, that is huge Infinite Dodge, because look at Swamp's pathing to get there. Swamp skipped the entire top half of the map to get there in time, and now Kassin can actually kind of sit in there and threaten your blue buff here. We're seeing Kaito also try and pressure up, and I love that Nap canceled the recall, because they're recognizing this as an opportunity to punish Swamp for yellow Yoshi's poor early game.
Yeah, and that is the full priority coming through from Nap, looking for the roam, looking for the barrel play into the enemy jungle. Going to be setting up, going to be hovering. Kaito as well with the full-on shove, has that sleepy trouble bubble, controls so much space in this jungle, takes the cone away. That's the angle of engage, the angle of escape, and that's just a clean buff steal away.
Yeah, as soon as Swamp had to smite away the Gromp here, AXZ kind of lost control of the blue buff. CGA could just start it up right away here. And we touched on that mid lane, right? The fact that Zoe early on has more prio is punishing Megumin now. Does Megumin recognize that he might be in danger?
Is going to play it nice and safe. The spacing, very respectful there as that troll comes running on through. And nothing inting coming through from AXZ so far. Some misplays for sure. That jungle definitely going to be bad for Swamp's pacing, but nothing catastrophic yet. We'll have to see if they can continue to hold up here.
Oh, Nema?
Maybe trying to set a little something up. Nema forced to flash. That's a nice little answer back from AXZ here.
AXZ more patient than I thought they'd be. I mean, they saw Nema all on his own, and I thought they're just going to pull the trigger immediately. You've got Gravitum, and you've got Renata. That's more than enough CC to run down a Nautilus. Unfortunately, they kind of waited and ultimately still burnt the flash, so it's kind of good either way. And I love that AXZ is playing with this fog of war, with this sort of tempo and timing control. Normally, you expect them to try and push that cheater recall and get back in, but they didn't do that. Doesn't pan out for now, but maybe later on it might be able to when they get a little bit more damage.
Yeah, for sure. Interestingly enough, even though they do recoup the shove here, CGA have had such thorough map control so far. It's nothing but a thing for Kassin to run on over to that first Drake of the game, which is the mountain, and scoop it on up. Trundle having a fine time sustaining off this early, so that's first Drake going over to Crest Gaming.
Yeah, that's the price you pay for that particular attempt down the bot side. Now, I will say, I personally don't think first Drake matters for the most part here. One Drake doesn't give you that much stats. Nema, where are you going, buddy? You've got 0 follow-up here.
Yeah, that was a Hylissang Hex Flash if I've ever seen one. Although I suppose it would have been more Hylissang if he'd actually hooked him there with no allies anywhere close. But Nema playing the hook champ, and when you're playing these hard engaged champs, sometimes the instinct takes over, right? It's just like playing Lee Sin. My mind's telling me no, but my body's telling me yes.
Yeah, as an AXZ fan, I can definitely sympathize with that. Since Ozaka's definitely had the hook syndrome issue. But no, Nema, okay. Then the thing was, I was a bit worried for Nema because they didn't actually know where Sanctuary was. Neither did they quite know where Swamp was. So it felt a little bit risky there, but wasn't punished whatsoever. And so far, things are still completely even. Kassin now going in again, just going to clear out all the vision. Red buff is about to spawn here, and they would have timers because this is only the second buff. Is Kassin going to go for it? No.
Yeah, going to angle instead towards a mid-gank. The Sleepy Trouble Bubble was landed before the dash could be taken. The burst, pretty decent from Kaito, but nothing lethal. Just going to get a nice chunk out. Trade evened up a little bit by that turret shot on the back half. Anything?
Fighting over this ward? Nah, they're just fighting for control here, and they're just respecting right now that you don't really want to fight with Gravitum Aphelios, especially when Nema's flash is still down. I do want to touch a little bit on mid lane though so far. Kassin's gone by mid lane twice, and I feel like Kassin's really role-playing his character here, kind of trolling a little bit. Neither time did he go for the gank for real. Like, the first time, he just walked into lane, didn't wait for Kaito to try and set anything up whatsoever. Second time, Kaito lands a Sleepy Trouble Bubble. Kassin comes in really late after that because he was clearing wards. Literally just goes in, throws a pillar, walks off. Like,
it's a dominance move, RMC. True. It's great. No CC, no damage, just vibes. It's giving troll. We love to see it. But we do have a nice little handshake from Asuka. It's red-white guns, but Nemo just Spider-Man's away, so no real kill threat coming out, and this is sort of the pace we've been seeing so far in summer, right? It feels like both of these teams really happy to try and bank on their scaling instead of really trying to force plays early.
Yeah, neither team really feel like they have to do anything. If there's GP for the side of CGA here, and we've already touched on the fact that they've got the ability to siege later. AXIZ right now, they're waiting for their power spikes as well. I think now that Swamp is level 6 and actually has the Cyclone, maybe we'll actually see proper commitment from the side of AXIZ to these plays here. And with that Cyclone as well, you can kind of go to any lane. Wukong does great into GP because you can't cleanse the knock up here, so the oranges don't really matter. Yellow Yoshi can always follow up on that. Bot side punishable as well, especially if you can get the poke down on Nema early. Mid's a little bit dicier, but Zoe's portal jump does mean that she has to hop back to wherever she originally was at as well.
Hey now, Dice isn't playing in this game, as we see the Hex Flash angle once again, not going to go aggressive. Nema baiting us just a little bit. But it's a great point you bring up about the way that Swamp can impact this top lane and try and get Yeliashi back in. As a GP1 trick, I've felt the pain of knockups many, many times. Eating your oranges, getting your vitamin C does nothing for being knocked into the air.
Yeah, in the first place, I don't understand how vitamin C somehow magically cleanses everything. Like, when I got hit with COVID, vitamin C didn't do squat for me, mate. Like, I don't see how it's going to stop a stun or a silence here. AXZ, though, gonna start up the Herald, with that strength that they have, Swamp being here, and CGA seemingly content to just give this one up for free.
Yeah, they do get a nice little shove back in bot lane. Jinx staying even with the Aphelios for the most part, but it really felt like the point of strength between these two hypercarriers was going to be maybe Sanctuary's ability to set things up in the early game with the Gravitum Infernum combination. So once that didn't come through, I'd really favor Jinx going into the late game. What about you?
Yeah, well, that's generally what we see is the Jinx outranges the Aphelios a lot in a lot of these team fights. But I am willing to suspend disbelief for a second here in Infinite Dodge, because we've seen a couple of the AD carries, here in the LJL really pop up. I mean, Yuhi comes to mind with his Aphelios we saw earlier this split as well. Sometimes, the Infernum can really change the nature of fights, even more so than Jinx Rocket can here. So, as an AXZ fan, I'm going to hold belief in Sanctuary that maybe he can turn things later on, but that's a ways away. We're only 10 minutes in Infinite Dodge, and so far I'm more concentrated on turrets and pressure that we can get down, because AXZ has gotten Herald so far and CJ haven't been able to find anything to sort of answer. So I want to see what Swamp opts to do with this, whether we do see him go down to this bot lane and try and repressure there.
Yeah, he is hovering around. The Drake already going to be started up by Crest Gaming Act. They have such nice vision control behind the pit. They have the Scuttle Relic as well. It's a 2v3 brewing right here. I don't know if you want to take this as AXZ, but in goes Swamp. Here comes the hostile takeover to actually zone the team away. Megaman threatened the shuffle as well, forced the flash out of Kassin, and that's a nice clean heist. AXZ come in. They get that Drake right out of CGA's hands.
Really well played from AXZ there. They recognize the strength that they have with their composition. It's the same way they could kind of just walk into the top side. We touched on that Cyclone. CGA doesn't have an ultimate that, or I guess they do have the depth charge, but they're not as strong in the team fights at this point in the game. So CGA trying to sneak that away, and AXZ didn't have vision either. They just kind of walked into that and were just like, hey, we think maybe they're doing this. They didn't trade us for Herald earlier because Dragon wasn't up. We can fight this, and they did.
Yeah. Critically as well, it's been quiet on this front for a little while after what was a rough level 1, but if you take a nice check-in on that top lane, Yellow Yashi weathering the storm, went for those early Ninja Tabi, has been, oh, that was close, has been surviving the poke very well from this GP, and is slightly ahead in CS as we see the all-in in bot lane. Nema getting punished here, but the Moonlight Vigil just completely whiffs, and now the Cannon Barrage will turn it around. Nap was biding his time, he didn't use it for the Dragon as Hybrid flashes under the turret to get excited. The punish isn't going to come through from Swamp either as Sin cancels it out with that pillar. Beautifully played sequence by Crest Gaming.
And Dodge, you've got to remember, anytime you see a GP in the game, it means the opposite side of the map has to pay special attention. It's like Karthus. It's a global, man. You got to pay attention. Now, Swamp here, losing his red buff, is going to try and contest this one here. Megaman.
Yeah, that was a nice setup. It's going to force out the early wall from the Azir, but it does pick up 1, and Kaito forced to sort of scurry on away there. So a nice little bit of payback from AXZ coming out.
Okay, and answer, and more importantly, Dodge, we're talking about that jungle mid prio. It's coming through mid lane. The gank is still coming through, but we get a replay of the bot side. And Sangshu whiffing the Moonlight Vigil to me was the biggest problem. That wasn't even close. And I think he just buffered it wrong, unfortunately, and gets punished for it. And the moment, if the Moonlight Vigil landed, they could have still fought that, right? It would have been a 2v1, even if the Cannon Barrage comes down. But the moment they missed that, it wasn't a 2v2 anymore, because Nap gets to drop the Cannon Barrage, and we saw in the jungle as well, Sin was zoning out Swamp.
Yeah, it was a very well-coordinated sequence coming out from CGA. AXZ going to answer back a little bit there with the Rift Herald, get some plate money for themselves before it does drop off in the mid lane. Gold, though, still very much in the favor of CGA around this 15-minute mark. As we approach it, it's about 1.5K. Very nice. Essentially exactly where we were last time, right? Wasn't that what J-Real was saying on the desk? History repeats itself here.
A little bit. I mean, last time it felt like they split the map where AXZ went towards the top half and CJ went to the bot side. This time it feels like they're still trying to contest. Nema completely getting caught out. No flash this time.
Yeah, that's a nice layering of CC. Double Renata CC sets it up Sangchu nicely. That's going to be a great pickup for the Aphelios to get back on the board here. Very, very well done by AXZ.
Yeah, Sangchu still does have to be careful, though. Hybrid does have the Kraken Slayer completed, so even without his support right now, it's a bit of a tough ask for Sangchu to be able to win this out against Hybrid. But there we go. Plate gold from that Herald here, favoring AXZ, and AXZ still down gold. I wonder if that's coming just mostly from the GP passive here, because I'm not seeing... Well, I guess mid lane, there's also a 20 CS differential in favor of Kaito, which isn't reflected right now, as we saw in that last trade. The 2v2 heavily favors AXZ in mid jungle currently.
Yeah, definitely. As we do get a nice little check in there, it's, doing a fan broadcast. Sometimes the producers of the official broadcast seem to be fighting the narratives we want to tell, and sometimes they come in exactly on point. RMC, we see it is going to be Hybrid holding most of that gold difference for the team there at about 6.5K individually, which is pretty crazy, but it speaks well to the CS differential he's been able to build up, the aggressive, impressive play diving under that turret to pick up a kill. So very, very big stuff coming out from Hybrid, as we kind of expected as well. But that's going to be the Moonlight Vigil into the Gale Force forward. Now the bailout is going to set it up for Sangchu. That's the power of Renata Aphelios.
That's also way closer than it should have been, Dodge. I mean, Hybrid almost just pulled off a 1v2. No bailout, Sangchu was dead there. And this is Sangchu with Gale Force as well. So really scary for AXZ and not what you want to see. And when we talk about CGA, we talked a lot about AXZ's win conditions. But for CGA, what we've seen from them is that they play best when Hybrid's ahead and they play towards that bot side and you leave Nap on an island. Thus far, up to that point, the game has been going that way here. You get Hybrid that lead. Hybrid looks to try and 1v2, looks to try and pop off, carry the game. Look how close that gets. You also even have to flash forward to get the bail out there. I didn't even realize that the first time, but not for that. Sangchu's dead. And then Nap just gets the free skill topside. It's CGA, sure, they got killed, but they are still comfortable. Everything is still going to plan for them.
Yeah. It is going to be another Drake picked up for AXZ here, the first of those Hex Techs, but if the back is canceled on Megaman, the pick could have been there, but the Sleepy Trouble Bubble not following the path of escape, going to mean there's no further follow-up available now for AXZ. Going to drop this second Herald, just try and crack this tier 1 mid.
Yeah, and TP immediately from Megaman to come back. He has to be careful he doesn't get dove. Nema's actually here, and if Nema just pulls the trigger...
Yeah, that's big burst coming out from the Zoe. Could have set up some further troubles for the AXZ mid laner, but not going to make fried chicken out of him. Meanwhile, it'll be the other solo laner of Crest Gaming who does actually make good on a push, picks up a turret for CGA, equals up the turret score at 1 apiece. This GP really starting to come online. Now they'll have the Triforce complete.
Exactly, and now Nap could potentially get unleashed onto the map as well here. Those barrels could potentially hurt. We've already seen the cannon barrage actually really chunk out Sanctuary and Ozika, so imagine that with the barrels when it comes to these objective fights. No objectives to be had though. Second Herald's already down. Dragon just went the way of AXZ not too long ago either here, so for CGA, a bit of just a holding pattern right now to just wait for those objectives to spawn before they fight. They are not in a rush whatsoever.
Yeah, we often say that in these low state opportunities, and yet it feels like in the LJL teams always find a way to make a boo-boo, and it looks like Megaman has made one. No. Nice mobile chicken right there. Going to scuttle on out of the top lane. Going to have to find another opportunity for a Punisher's Crest Gaming. They'll go back to playing the waiting game.
I feel like chicken's not being fair to Megaman here. I mean, that if you ruin that fast, that chicken's got wings. What's an edible fowl here, Dodge, that flies?
Yeah, because turkeys don't fly, chickens don't fly, ducks kind of fly. Not for very long at a time, but they'll do it.
I mean, if he's got water walking, he's a duck, right?
Oh, true! Megaman with the waterfowl cosplay as Swamp. Just getting trolled by these pillars. It feels like all Kassin can sort of do at this point. They don't want to blow up anybody's spot. They don't want to start a real fight with no objective on the map. I mean, these teams really just trying to be patient, and sometimes that means just throwing out random pillars.
Yeah, and Kassin really hasn't had as much of an impact as I'd like to see. I mean, oftentimes you see the Trundle being picked against Wukong to try and beat out and bully Wukong in the 1v1 earlier on. And Kassin even went in, invaded, got the blue buff away, and since then has been a non-factor. He's 0-1-0. And for the Trundle, I'm just getting a little bit worried that, hey, you're not doing anything. Soon you're just going to be relegated to that pillar bot and subjugate bot to just stop AXZ from engaging onto you. It's a valid strat, but come on, is that really the way any jungler wants to play?
No, it's not. And it's sort of a scary proposition, the lack of impact that Kassin has had, right? Because we came into this game with the expectation that, sure, it could go either way, but I think we were all feeling CGA a tad on the desk. It felt like they were in the better position. But if you look at these standings, RMC, it's one game separating these teams. They'll be tied up if AXZ can actually take this one home. And the less action you're able to generate in the early game to get this Zoe snowballing, to really make the Trundle scary, the more that scaling on the side of AXZ is going to start to worry you.
True, and ever since pretty much, day 5, I'd say, for AXZ, the early game has been a problem for them where they do fall behind and then they have to play on the back foot. Now, if they're coming at the 20-minute mark here, Dodge, and they're pretty much dead even, 500 gold does not matter at the 20-minute mark here. They are in a position to actually make things happen, and granted, Azuka doesn't have the engage action.
Oh, the Cannon Barrage snipe out for 1 health, just like that. An inch was given, a mile was taken, and now it might just be the game taken as well as CGA responding to the very late roams of AXZ, just going to zone them out and even find another pick perhaps onto Ozga, forced to use that hostile takeover defensively, but they're right there to take the Baron.
On spawn pretty much there. It could not have gone better for CGA, and I know Dodger said that CGA are waiting for objectives. I didn't expect them to be doing a Baron of all objectives here. AXZ can't even contest this. Losing Swamp and Sanctuary was just too big a loss.
Yeah, I mean, it's wild. You look at this team composition as well, the Baron taking capabilities of a GP, Trundle, Jinx, even at 20 minutes, that Purple Worm melted like butter. A very, very big swing for CGA here. They have so much standing gold to collect on the map with this buff as well.
Yeah, and the setup for this from CGA, we've touched on their sieging capabilities here, but it's on complete display right here. It wasn't even the Sleepy Trouble bubble. It was just a straight paddle star being set up by the slow from Jinx. And the problem was the TPs from Yellow Yoshi and Megaman. The call, I think, was okay. Like, the idea was good. If they got the flank off and Sangshu and Swamp were still up, as long as Swamp was still up, they could have fought that. But the problem's Swamp and Sangshu just died way too quickly. And now AXZ, they get themselves at Soul Point, but CGA don't care about dragons. They've got Baron buff here. They want to take turrets. They want to take your base.
Yeah, it's not the Soul Drake, right? So what do they mind trading 2 turrets for that? It's going to go great. They even get Megaman stopwatch here and force the flash as well on this siege. This Baron buff already been a success, and they still have it for a sizable amount of time to start hitting these tier 2s in the side lanes.
Yeah, if anything, they can just go, right, as you said, to those side lanes here. Bot side still has a tier 1 turret if they want to pick that up. And AXZ here, they're rotating, trying to match, but they have to be careful. If they do get picked off again, well, we've seen that combo before, and Cannon Barrage right now is such a strong enabling tool to set up for Zoe Sleepy Trouble bubbles, pardon me, to try and cut AXZ off from even approaching these turrets right now.
Yeah, the range difference between these comms really coming to bear onto the face of AXZ. This hybrid snaps it up, snipes through onto Asuka. No bailout gonna save you there when you've been put to sleep, and this has been a huge swing already. The power play is about 5k. CGA looking absolutely poised to take this one home at this point.
500 gold, Dodge, to 5,000 gold in the span of 2 minutes here, or slightly over that as Baron buff ticks down to the last minute. And CGA, they're in a great position. And this is when a siege comp looks most dangerous. When you're sieging, when you're on the front foot here, when you get to just kind of push AXZ into a rough spot. And you're seeing that, yeah, they're just throwing out CP trouble bubbles, just throwing out those zaps. If it hits, we kill. If it doesn't hit, no problem. Just wait for cooldown. Swamp here. Does he know? It felt like they almost knew with the way they're stepping up there. But yeah, CGA respecting that. They're not quite willing to go for that 2v2 just yet.
No, it's a bit of a task when you take your 2 lowest income members and tell them to find a pick all on their own. You know, you don't want that Baron ego to start to get to you. Oh, guys, we're so ahead now. If those players were unstoppable. Yeah, but the Trundle and the Nautilus aren't ahead. I mean, it's poverty for the Nautilus. Doesn't even have a mythic yet. As Naukazin may be trying to force something, but still has to be cautious. Just going to take the tier 1 instead. That's a fine prize.
Yeah, they're pushing it. We're seeing a ton of pings onto mid lane here. They're telling Sangshu to push this, but I actually don't think it's safe for Sangshu to go here. Nap is up here. Cannon Barrage is available, and Megaman again. Oh.
Yeah, it's a scary situation for these squishy carries of AXZ. Just feels like they have no recourse against all of this burst flying in from a million miles away. Cannon Barrage available as well. That's the Sleepy Trouble bubble. The hostile takeover connects with absolutely nothing, as maybe Nema going a bit too far. Asuka still alive for now, even has the bailout, will get the revive off of the takedown as well. So that's just the overextension. We talked about maybe the cockiness coming through for Nema, and they still have 2 members mid, RMC.
Yeah, I think that was more just they're trying to make something happen here. It was a race against time, because in that 2v1, Nap was slowly getting pushed away. Nema ends up trading his life for turret. Kind of worth it for CGA if you're looking at straight numbers, but I think AXZ breathing a bit of a sigh of relief. They managed to answer mid lane. They managed to get a pick or a kill on that bot side, helping to keep themselves still in the game here. And if you watch the way the siege works, I mean, Kaito's getting all the poke here. The problem is that instead of Kaito with Nema, they needed somebody with a bit more sustained damage. And the call was obviously made for them to just abandon Nema. Hybrid, Kassin, they're not going for this. They're focusing down the turret. And that's probably the better strategic call here.
Yeah, absolutely, and it did wind up working out well. And while AXZ might be breathing a sigh of relief that they survived Baron number 1, that was a 20-minute Baron that eliminated every turret outside of their base. The next one, they will not be anywhere near as lucky, and they're really suffering for lack of vision control on the map right now.
Yeah, they're trying to funnel Sangshu as much as possible. Sangshu did just pick up that top side outer turret as well as that mid side outer turret from the earlier play. But despite that, Sangshu is still an item behind hybrid here. So for AXZ, I like that you're funneling gold towards your carries. And yes, both Megaman and Sangshu scale really well, but you're just so far behind. And for CGA, if they just keep pushing, if they just keep sieging, great, you're raising that turret. That turret doesn't mean anything to them. It's what, 2 waves and they can probably take it down.
Yeah. They do have the fake turret. They have the safety and security of something that's not very safe or secure in that Azir turret as it does tick down. And look at CGA just playing with their range and saying, come on, come contest this Drake. Walk into us. We really, really want you to. I mean, what can AXZ even do?
I mean, Swamp's looking for a flank here, but the problem is that's not where CGA is. Moonlight Vigil just barely fails to land here. And AXZ, I like this call. You can't contest that Drake. It's very, very late or early. I mean, it's only second Drake for CGA here. You can afford to give it up, and instead they go for that inner turret.
Yeah, and they do manage to find it looks like an escape route where they won't be pinched off either. That can barrage wave clear with the Ravenous Hydra, though, going to show exactly why so many people are playing the Bruiser style of GP right now. The Hex Gates offer a nice get-out-of-jail-free card for AXZ, but it might just be another Baron going over to CGA, because look at these health bars. Oh. Very, very close. Asuka definitely shaking in the boots right there, and it doesn't get any easier. They're going to have to reapproach. They're bringing out the flank TP, but the Chompers are good from Hybrid to keep Megaman from finding an angle in. Maybe they've done enough to dissuade it for now, though.
Yeah, with that alone, CGA probably don't want to do this here. And Ozika was actually caught in a very awkward spot where Ozika was the one who needed to back. Ozika was living on a hope and a prayer. Anybody looks at Ozika funny, he's dead. But he can't, because they needed the hostile takeover there to dissuade the Baron. That's really the thing that CGA is scared of in that Baron power play. Sure, a Megaman flank is scary, Swamp flank is scary, but in a 5v4, they probably still take that unless the hostile takeover causes Hybrid to kill his entire team. So CGA respecting that. They can just go back to Baron, though, and this time they can set up the vision to try and punish AXZ, set up death bushes. And AXZ, they don't really have a choice. They have to face check this. The last Baron took everything outside their base. This Baron will start breaking down inside their base. Yeah,
definitely could be the death knell for AXZ. I just had a grim thought here, RMC, which is that if you're playing against Hybrid, Renata not the worst support to pick up for yourself, because he's going to be really fed. Maybe you can get him to kill his own team.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't have cleanse, so...
Oh, no! Hybrid 200 IQ summoner spell, as it's a 2 IQ attempt at escape from AXZ. They're just routed. And that opens up the golden path for CGA. They can march right up this river and go and take the Baron they've been eyeing down this whole time. Yeliash going to try and answer back, but this isn't looking good.
No, not ideal here. And once again, AXZ just can't contest this Baron. They're going to give it up for free. What else can they find? Sanctuary pushing up mid as well here. They're shoving lanes out best they can. Yellow Yoshi took down inner turret. Actually, with the Trinity Force, he's doing a lot of damage to this inhibitor turret here.
Look at the wave clear from the Gangplank, though. The barrels slowing down Yellow Yoshi, but you don't want to overchase. Sanctu on the flank, but here comes the Sin through the Hex Gates. Easy access. Do they find the 1v1? Yes, they do. Sanctu with the red-white guns saying, I'm a carry. You're just a man in a pirate costume. And that's something for AXZ.
That's huge for AXZ. They baited out so well as well. And unfortunately, they kind of saw that, hey, Swamp's on the side, but they didn't actually catch Vision and Sanctuary. And that death there onto Nap means that CGA actually can't push out. Because if you push out without Nap available, without the cannon barrage or his barrels to help siege here, AXZ can engage 5v4. So they've burnt out half the burn buff already, Infinite Dodge, just with that one pick here. And by the time Dragon comes back up as well, the Baron buff would almost have worn off. So AXZ massive right here.
Yeah, big shutdown right onto the carry you want as well. We look at this Baron power play. It's not even been worth the value of the Baron they took so far. We thought that the second Baron would break the back of AXZ in this game after the first one went so well, but they have managed to really find themselves a good position here. They're only down about 4.5k. They have brought the gold lead closer to parity, so maybe Sanctu can do it, right? We saw it in LCK the other night, aiming on the Aphelios, the 1v9 in the late game, even as his team desperately tried to throw around him. There's still a chance.
There is. He's only half an item now behind Hybrid, and that's actually pretty significant here, especially once you actually complete the items, then it really narrows that gap. CGA trying to maximize 1 minute left on Baron here. They've called down Nap. Nap is back up. They're looking to siege here, and Megaman off on the side, actually going for the recall to protect this mid lane.
Yeah, critically, this next Drake, the Hextech Soul Point Drake for CGA, the Hextech Soul Drake for AXIZ, going to be up in 35 seconds. And for that fight, Nap probably won't fall quite so easily again. That's a stopwatch sitting in the inventory. That's a big pickup.
Yeah, I don't know if AXIZ can contest this. They've lost all vision here, and Mega Man and Ozuka both chunked, eating the separate combo of the Sleepy Trouble Bubble and the Paddle Star here. And with 15 seconds to go, even with Hextech Gates here, AXIZ probably just have to watch this one go without even trying to get close.
Yeah, they'd be flying blind. They could get there quickly, but look at that vision control around the bottom quadrant jungle for CGA as they are just continuing to siege as well. They have 20 seconds left on this Baron. They want to make the most of it as that's the depth charge to just eliminate Asuka. That's one of your biggest team fighting tools gone, but look at the flanks. They're trying to find something. AXIZ, it's do or die. Megaman looking for the shuffle into the Nar combo. Can they actually find something? It's going to be the Cyclone into the backline. Sanctuary set up. He finds one on Takaito. That's so huge, but look at Jinx now. It's her turn to free fire, but the Moonlight Vigil finds so much damage, and that's going to be CGA getting routed out. It's the 2-for-2 trade, and look at Megaman. Deep TP flank coming in. Sanctu into the stopwatch on a sliver. Kassin tried to pick it up. He walked right into him. No, the Amphelio's going to fall, but it might still be AXIZ's victory here as they can at least pick up Nap in the back half. What a fiesta!
Okay, Kassin now. Walk away, Kassin. Don't do this. You asked me, Fin Dodge, about Aphelios versus Jinx, and this was why I hesitated to say Jinx would win that here. I have faith in the Aphelios supremacy, and Sanctu made that look great. Kassin, okay, will not be punished by this. And Megumin and Sanctu, played that fight incredibly well. Megumin has not died yet this game. 4-0-2 right now, and CGA have to respect these flank angles from Swamp, from Yellow Yoshi. When they have equal numbers, look at what this comp can do.
Yeah, and things really feel they've done a complete 180 here. I mean, this is Hextech Souls. We do get a quick replay if you want to break this fight down for us.
I mean, it just comes down to that flank that we looked for the last time, right? Last time it was Yellow Yoshi and Megumin, but they had members dead. This time, everybody's nice and healthy, ready to go. Only Ozuka is down, no hostile takeover, but Nap's a little bit late to the party as well, so it allows them to get on the backline. And Hybrid has bought so much time, but the Moonlight Vigil here, man, the Infernum, that's what I'm talking about for team fights with Aphelios, where, sure, you might not outrange the Jinx, but you get one good Infernum on the enemy team, and it works. It's scary how close this was. Despite that, though, Hybrid still almost killing Sanctu, Nap almost killing Yellow Yoshi. If any of them had gone down here, then Megumin can't 1v2 at this point. So it's still incredibly close, and CGA's lead is still an advantage to their credit.
Yeah. 4K is the gold lead, but at this stage in the game, who knows how impactful that will be. It's going to be the Cam Barrage just for wave clear, but look at Megaman finding Hybrid! Are you kidding me with that shuffle? Chicken Man makes good, and this is really starting to feel like AXIZ's game. I can't believe the turnaround we're seeing. They have red-white. They're going to continue to siege here.
Yeah, they could look to end here because they need the damage from Hybrid for CGA to win a lot of these fights. With Hextech Soul as well right now, if anybody from CGA gets caught out, they can absolutely punish here. The slow is applicable. Baron coming up in 30 seconds, same time as Hybrid here. With the gate, CGA might be able to contest this. I don't know if I like that AXIZ is looking to play a little bit fast and loose.
Yeah, they do send Yellow Yoshi back to deal with this wave. That's critical. Don't want any backdoor shenanigans coming out. Nap can absolutely burn turrets to the ground with that trial by fire, so definitely safe to go and defend your base, but they didn't clear out any vision, did AXIZ. Double pinks for CGA. I mean, they still have a Farsight in the pit. They have so much vision right now, but Asuka gonna block the paddle star to set up the engage. We're gonna find the alley-oop. Megaman's gonna pop off. Everything goes AXIZ's way, despite a little. Oh well, bye-bye Asuka. But they still pick up the victory for now. I mean, Hybrid is back on the map. Can he impact this in time? The cannon barrage. They're going for round 2, but look at the shuffle. It was still in the back pocket. Megaman even has the stopwatch to set things up, but Nap goes into the GA. Hybrid could get excited here. Can they contest this into the Baron? Doesn't look like it with the Hextech Soul as well. I mean, this is getting really, really dicey for CGA.
Yeah, and I'm just watching their base as well. Infinite Dodge, the supers pushing in the mid lane here, thankfully balanced out by the other supers. But CGA side was pushing. And You know what? I consider that a win for AXZ. They got the Baron at the end of the day here, and great turnaround, great punish from them. We had already said, Jinx, Baron, they spawn at the same time here. So even with Hybrid running as fast as he can, AXZ had the numbers advantage. They took great use of it. And now, yeah, sure, there's a 1.5k gold lead for CGA, but that doesn't mean much compared to that 4,000 from earlier. Now, we do get to see the setup to this sort of play. And this was the pick onto Hybrid, which got everything there. Yes, CGA was setting up vision around Baron, but they left the bot side unattended. And that was what allowed this flank to happen here. This got a little bit risky when they sent Yellow Yoshi to the bot side. He doesn't have TP to this fight. But the way AXZ turn here is the massive thing. They don't overcommit to Baron. As soon as they see anybody, Azuka flashes over for the hostile takeover to set up the pick. The Baron was never the call. The Baron was just the bait for what happens after.
Yeah, masterfully played by AXZ. Be so huge for them to finally pick up another W here with a direct competitor in the standings. Double Uber buffs. Sitting ready to go. A nice little sun disc as well to fall back on if things get a little bit less than ideal, like all that long-range poke is. But look at them. They weathered the storm. That's not what's been happening for the past 15 minutes, RMC. They're in a much better spot than if that happened 10 minutes ago. I mean, they're still threatening this base.
True. That happened 10 minutes ago. They die. Pretty much there. Even with that sun disc up. But this time, the push gets stopped, but they don't lose anybody off in the back end of it. And with this, I don't know if AXZ can find anything else. There's only a minute left on Baron, and they have to recall, have to set up. Elder is also coming up in a minute here, Dodge. And for all that AXZ have closed the gap massively in the last 10-15 minutes here, Elder alone will decide everything. Whichever team gets Elder and can actually hold on to it can probably just win out this game because the fights have been that close.
Yeah, it's what the buff was designed for, right? To close out games, and it often does a masterful job at that. It's rare you see a team defend against Elder in the late game. How do you want to see AXZ attack getting to that Elder, keeping the vision setup protected and making sure they're the ones who pick that up?
Well, with their composition here, Dodge, they need to be proactive with it. AXZ has been winning fights when they can set up ambushes or when they can get the flanks off here. So they need to do that here, maintain that vision, and try and actually fight CGA before you get to the dragon. If you're in the river facing off with CGA, well, we've seen the siege situation favor them. The barrels, the poke from Zoe is really, really strong. Even under turret there, CGA can poke you out. So AXZ is all about getting those initial angles, making sure that they are the ones pulling the trigger first.
Yeah, and that's a nice trigger to pull on that red gun. Find Kaito chunked to half already, but look at the long distance damage coming down. Not as effective as it's been so far. The cannon barrage not finding very much. Now the Trap's just trying to zone Sanctu off from rejoining the team, but the Nar's doing work to find out Nab. And that's the GP taken off the board. No GA, hostile takeover. Kassin hitting his own teammates, and that is one key carry off the map. They can turn for this Elder now, you have to feel.
Okay, so this is better, but still not completely safe for AXZ. In that Elder takes a long... It's basically a Baron, right? It takes a long time to kill here, and Hybrid is still up, but Hybrid has decided to disengage. CGA are giving Elder away here, and I don't know if I like this call from CGA one bit. Infinite Dodge, yes, you don't want to coin flip it there, but can you hold against Elder?
I mean, there's no Baron to trade for. There's no consolation prize. This is going to be real scary stuff. You've won team fights up to this point, but AXZ has been slowly making more and more of a case for themselves. Now they have double dragon buff coming through. I mean, this could just be the end of the game coming through right now.
Yeah, mid inhib going to go down. It's not defended whatsoever. There's no turrets. AXZ playing this by the books. They're actually backing out here. I wonder if they're going to shop and just push top here. I almost feel like you could just sit in the base, wait for your minions to come in and push with them.
Yeah, critically, Elder buff, first Elder buff doesn't last as long as your typical Baron buff, right? So they don't have a huge timer to reset, spend their gold, and get back out to attack that top lane as 5 with the Elder still in pocket. They have about a minute and a half here, but they get the nice recall set up, nothing interrupted, no hybrid rockets or anything like that, and now it's just going to be about completing the task, right? Crossing the finish line. We'll see if they can do it.
Looks like they're actually going to just try and fight the Baron with this buff here. There'll be 30 seconds of overlap between Baron spawn and having that Elder buff. 30 seconds is more than enough time for AXZ to burn down the Baron itself here. So AXZ, okay, the transitioning buff to buff instead. And step one of that is setting up vision. They're denying all that vision that CGA just put down not too long ago, but I need to see that vision line extended past the river here, Dodge. We saw over and over again, even at that dragon play, it's about cutting CGA off before they get to the objective, and the vision has been key for that.
Yeah, absolutely the case. They are going to try and get the shove in on top lane, try and make CGA respond to multiple threats at the same time. Yeah, they already have 2 lanes of supers piling in. They don't want to have to deal with another siege while they are preoccupied with the Baron. This could lead to some sort of ruckus, but that Elder's still on for 30 seconds.
Yeah, Megaman now pushing up that mid lane here. So top side's looking like a 4v4 Kassin.
Yeah, it does flash early. Isn't going to have that to try and get into the pit for any potential steal. Dominoes in the line for AXZ. It's just about giving it that flick and watching them fall. See if they can convert here as the Baron is live. They have so much Baron damage. Swamp behind the pit as well takes it over. There's the cannon barrage.
Yellow Yoshi?
Just the zoning ultimates. The Wombo coming out. Yellow Yoshi maybe trading a bit more aggressively than was needed there. Going to give his life for it, but now it's the Baron buff with 2 waves of supers RMC. I think they're going to do it.
This is risky because it's a 4v5 here. Yellow Yoshi diving in. I feel like that was a split goal because that was a beautiful Meganar into the entire enemy team, but there was literally no follow-up. Nobody was there to be able to get in range, and because of that, great, you got Baron, but it's the same situation CGA had on their second Baron when they lost Nap. And now you're only going to get effectively 1 minute of push, or maybe 1.5 minutes of push with that Baron buff here. You do have supers coming in mid and bot, but it's not the most effective use, and as the game stalls out later and later, it's not like the scaling that greatly favors AXZ here, Dodge. CGA scaling is just as good. So it feels like both teams are just going for that one last massive coin flip.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta keep winning the fights. The execution's been decent for AXZ so far, but all it takes is 1 minute of down tempo. You know, one mistake, one action that doesn't leave you set up to get that next objective and win that next fight, and it's all over. We're at that stage of the game where one push ends things, and AXZ seem a bit hesitant to try and make that one push.
Yeah, they're just waiting for Yoshi to join them right now or to get in position for that split push. They still have the Hextech Soul, and it's been instrumental thus far in potentially trying to find picks here. Baron buff, minute and 30 here, and they're sieging up this top lane. I don't know how effective Yellow Yoshi will be with the split push pressure when you already have supers in those lanes.
Yeah, and it's not even going to be a red buff taken away despite all this map control from AXZ. Still CGA managing to squeak out the tiny, tiny victories. But these double waves going to prove lots and lots of pressure for Nap to deal with. Opens things up well for AXZ in the top lane. Oh, Kaito, no flash into the locket. That might just be it. That's a lot of big cooldowns down. Finally, AXZ breaking the back of CGA. They'll pick up the third inhib, and this is the guaranteed win state, right? There's nothing left. No, why are you taking the Hex Gates out? End the game!
I'm going to be honest, I don't know what Yoshi's doing. Like, what? Like I said, don't split push. You've got supers there. Just group up and siege together here. Get the poke down. Megumin getting absolutely chunked means that this time they have to disengage.
Oh my god, the engage right onto Sangchu as well as the rest of the team's getting chunked out. No, not like this. It won't happen. Sangchu manages to not let his team throw this game away and will even pick up for himself the pentakill here to close it on out. No! Scumbag Swamp pulling it away. Ah, but the Aphelios 1v9 dream was realized. AXZ finally pick up another W here in round robin number 2. Or are we on to 3 now? It's been a long season already.
We're still early yet. I mean, as a fan of AXZ, Dodge, it felt like third round robin. It felt like it's been that long since AXZ picked up a win. But I am so happy for them. And this is what we're talking about. Get Megumin rolling. Sangchu having a pop-off game as well this series. At the end there, his Aphelios just refuses to let them lose the fight. And this is the AXZ that we saw in games 1 and 2. This is the heights that AXZ can reach.
Yeah, we love to see Sangchu pop off. We said if you try and play through Sangchu as a win condition while they're doing it with hybrid, you're not going to win that 50-50. And while they did attack the angle that we won with the Azir from Mega Man playing through mid lane to an extent, Sangchu proved us wrong. And we'll break down all of the ways, the myriad ways in which Sangchu triumphed on that Aphelios after a short break when we do get back to the desk. But until then, we'll be right back.
CGA, also known as Can't Guarantee Anything, are a team known for their variability from match to match. High elo coaches struggle to understand the complexities and nuances within their gameplay, which can sometimes loop back around to becoming three-head plays, leading into difficulty in predicting their match results. The day in which we can successfully predict the results will be the day humanity transcends. That is from Albert Einstein on CGA. So shout out to the copy pasta there. I think it's pretty fitting for this game, to be honest. And with that being said, let's get into this breakdown. Let's bring up the draft. And to be honest, normally or recently, I feel like we talked a lot about drafts and things being interesting, things being new. To be honest, this was a pretty standard draft. If you look at last game's draft and this game's draft, there's a few swaps, but realistically, a lot of the champions we all expected, we all have seen before. The drafts, I don't think, were the problem for this game. RMC, let's start with the start of this game. Actually, no. Let's start with the Azir. We wanted Azir. We wanted carries. Megamin, did he deliver?
Yep. Yes, he did. I said I didn't want to see a blind Azir, and this was not a blind Azir. They picked it after they saw the Zoe, and it worked out great. Yes, they lost out the early little bit of pressure, but it's fine, right? Like, you could scale up, and I'm so happy AXZ played it better. They didn't play it perfectly, but they played it better, and better was good enough to win.
Yeah, perfect. Definitely not how I described that game. The start, not great, to be honest. They were down about that 2K mark from 15 minutes. You know, that's the classic AXZ. However, 1 minute later, just 1 minute, 16 minutes in, the gold was even. So CGA not playing to how they did before and giving AXZ ways back into this game. And I do feel like that was a big part of how this game played out. Dodge, CGA, did they just make too many mistakes? Or was it that actually AXZ really put them under pressure?
I think it's a combination of both. I think CGA suffered from their own success to an extent where they played this composition that wants to control space with their range. Their engage is not strong. Trundle is not an engage champion, and they have Glacial Augment Nautilus who can go in, but once he's in, he's basically trading his life for the engage every time. They don't have like a consistent 5v5 traditional team comp, but they played exceptionally well with the range advantage they drafted for themselves in the early game. They sieged up a lot of turrets. They got a lot of objectives. They broke down the map, but once you have the entire map under your control, you have to hold the entire map under your control. And we just saw AXZ do such a good job at finding blind spots in the vision line, sneaking in, finding the cricks in the armor, so to speak, and getting through where they couldn't be seen. And that's where their capability to actually engage fights with the Cyclone, Megaman, time after time with the clutch Shurima shuffles, the engages, I mean, Yelloyashi on Gnar even popping off with some of these big 5-man ults into wallops. Like, it was just very well played in the late game from AXZ despite being at a disadvantaged state. I mean, this really speaks well to them as a team and poorly to CGA in the late game as well, to answer your question.
And it was that RMC said about that Gnar as well. He said he congratulated Yelloyashi on being really good on this Gnar, and it was really good. He came through, had some really big ultimates, had some high impact, and it's what you want to see. On the flip side, you talked about late game. Late game was a late game. You know, we watched some League of Legends. I think that the Barons obviously coming through, then the delayed pushes, then the Elder Drake, where I thought, you know what? This is so perfect. You know, this is like the narrative in the stars. You know, last time CGA almost threw around Elder. Maybe this time it's going to be AXZ, or actually AXZ are going to pick this one up and then win the game. And it's like, oh, Elder, but they couldn't close out this time kind of jokes. But no, we got the Elder Drake. And then nothing happened. You know, it felt like it very much was like a very chill moment. They took a couple towers, then they backed away, and then there was the Baron. And I feel like, although I'm very happy that AXZ won this game, and I'm really like, okay, AXZ showing some signs of life, perfect. I am also a little bit like, you took really long to end the game.
I think AXZ has the longest, or one of the longest average game times as a whole. And I remember in the first couple of, the first round robin, I think they actually had the longest average game times. And their wins, I think, are almost always 40 minutes, around there or higher. They're not great at finding their own leads, but they will punish mistakes from enemy teams. And I think it happened again this game. CGA made mistakes in AXZ. Took forever, but they did capitalize on it here, J-Real. So yeah, like we said, it's not perfect, but it doesn't have to be perfect. You just got to get wins. That's good enough. I don't care how you do it.
Yeah,
a W is a W, baby.
Yep, indeed. And the Felios there coming out from Sanctu, I wouldn't have put it down as like his most notorious champion, but actually really, really strong. And come on, we have to talk about it. Swamp, why did you steal the pentakill?
Reported. X9 the Wukong. You kick him off the team. I mean, it's so funny. I really thought the Felios was not going to have that pop-up performance like it did when we got around that 20-minute mark when the first Baron, I think, went right on over to the side of CGA. I didn't see the angle for Felios, but RMC never gave up. And, we saw it the other night in the LCK, as I mentioned during the game, aiming absolutely 1v9ing on that Felios. Scaling 80 carries are still good. It was like there was a new hotness period around the time the durability update hit where we stopped seeing the Jinx and Felios, who were everywhere last split, but they're coming back in a big fashion as we saw in this game, and they are so strong in the late game. It's wild.
All right, final question. To steal or not to steal the pentakill? Yes or no answer. RMC, you go first.
I'm not sure what is this question. What do you mean to steal or not steal? Like he
Do you-
should.
do
If you were in
steal-
Swamp's
when someone is on
shoes.
a quadra kill, if you were Swamp, do you steal the kill or do you not steal the kill? What's your outcome on this?
Oh man. I mean, of course, like you probably shouldn't steal it. So no, I wouldn't have stolen it. No.
Good guy RMC. I disagree completely. I called him out for the memes, but to be quite honest, pentas are earned, not given. If it was your penta, you would have taken the penta. I have damage, and I'm taking my kill.
I would have been absolutely molding if I was sanctioned, but it's A-OK. That is going to be game 1, but make sure you guys are comfortable in your nest because the Hawks are going to be swooping in with what could be the best upset of the day. We'll find out, though, after this break. Set the Hawks versus V3 coming up next.